Hi, I'm Rick, and in this video I'm going to show you a setup that I put together for a small church to enable them to inexpensively and reasonably easily hold hybrid worship services. And by hybrid, what I mean is extending the sanctuary to include people who are out on Zoom, or from another perspective, extending a Zoom meeting to include the sanctuary. So if you're trying to set up a hybrid church and trying to do it inexpensively, I hope this video will give you some ideas. Now, the title says Revised and Simplified, and that refers to the fact that there was an earlier version of this setup and a video about it that was somewhat more complicated. And the simplification in this version is that we're taking advantage of a technology called Zoom Rooms. Zoom Rooms are from the company Zoom, as you can imagine. You're probably familiar with Zoom meetings, but maybe not so much with Zoom Rooms. It's a technology oriented towards conference rooms where you have audio-visual equipment that you need to control. So a Zoom room is much like a Zoom running on your regular computer, with the difference that all the control of the audio-visual stuff is put on a tablet, like an iPad. I didn't initially consider Zoom rooms for our church because it sounded to me like it was going to be expensive. I would need high-end audiovisual equipment, and I would need to get a license or a subscription. And as it turns out, Zoom Rooms actually works just fine with the inexpensive cameras that we use. And also the way we use it doesn't require a subscription or license whatsoever, which was kind of surprising and pleasant. This slide shows a high-level picture of our system. It's basically a Zoom meeting where one of the participants is the sanctuary, and the sanctuary has a few cameras, a few microphones, a largish TV serving as a display, and also a sound bar connected to that TV. And all of this equipment is connected to a computer that's running the Zoom Room software, which is pretty similar to the Zoom software that you're used to, with the exception that all of the audio-visual control is done from a separate tablet. And that tablet could be an iPad, but it really doesn't have to be anything fancy since it doesn't do much. You can get away with a $50 low-end Android tablet just fine. The host in this setup, who is me in this church, has the usual Zoom host duties such as starting the meeting, making sure people are muted when they're supposed to be, and sharing media. But with the sanctuary attached, the host also has duties of controlling the audio-visual equipment in the sanctuary using the tablet. So you can see what those duties are, what that control involves if you look at the left of this slide. So I would say the main thing is camera selection, choosing the camera view. You can also zoom and pan the cameras. You can mute and unmute the sanctuary. You can control the volume of the speaker in the sanctuary, that is the sound bar. And you can modify the display in the sanctuary, that is whether it's in gallery view or speaker view. And you do all that from this tablet. This next slide shows the views from these three cameras that we have in our system. One is of the pulpit, so you can see the pastor preaching. One kind of shoots across the front of the sanctuary, so you can see the reader and the pianist. And the third one looks out over the congregation. And this picture shows the sanctuary, so you'll note that the display on the left is set up so that it's not really in your face, but it allows the congregation and the pastor in the pulpit to see who's out there on Zoom. Okay, before I show you how to run the system, let's take a quick tour of the hardware. So here we are in the sanctuary. This is the computer we're using to run Zoom Rooms. It's a refurbished Lenovo desktop that I picked up on Amazon for $111, and it comes with a 90-day guarantee and came with a keyboard and mouse there and seemed just perfect for what we need for the price. The mixer is buried here in the pulpit with the amp underneath it. So the main output of the mixer goes to the amp down below, but it also has an auxiliary output. So I got this adapter from 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter that we put in here. And then I got this long 3.5 millimeter audio cable, which it's like 20 feet long. Plug that into there, and that runs over and plugs into the audio input in the computer. The camera for the pulpit is mounted on this mic stand that we had lying around. And here it's a Logitech 270, and it just kind of stares the pastor in the face while he preaches. And the camera that looks across the front of the sanctuary is this Logitech C920 that has also on this very fancy mounting stand here that I really need to fix. And again, this is a USB camera like the 270, and they both of them plug into the computer here. The monitor for the computer is this, I think it's a 36-inch display. It's connected through an HDMI cable, and then down through this little adapter here, which is an HDMI DisplayPort to HDMI adapter, because the output of this computer is DisplayPort. And then we have this sound bar here, which is connected to the TV and provides the audio for anybody out on Zoom who's speaking into the sanctuary. Conveniently, all of this equipment, the cameras, the camera here, the audio equipment buried in the pulpit, and the display are all pretty close to one another, so we can run wires from all those things to the computer. However, we have another camera over there in the corner, which maybe I can zoom in, up on a mic stand, and that one is kind of too far for running a wire. So for that, I will show you what we do. So this is an old Android smartphone I had lying around. Doesn't have any self-service or anything, but it's got Wi-Fi and it's got an okay camera. And it's running this IP webcam app there. You see that IP webcam? Touch that. Should open it up. And you can see this is actually an app that turns your smartphone into a webcam. Pretty cool. And it wirelessly sends the video signal over to that computer, and the computer just sees it as another camera. Okay, so let's briefly talk about installing and running Zoom Rooms. It's actually not that big a deal. So here I am logged into the computer in the sanctuary that's going to be running Zoom Rooms, and I'm looking at the download center for Zoom. So if you want to download Zoom Rooms, you're going to come to this web page. Normally when you're running Zoom, you do this Zoom client for meetings, but we're going to scroll down past that and go all the way down to where it says Zoom Rooms for conference rooms and touch screen displays. You're going to download this thing. So I already have it downloaded. I'm not going to do it again. I talked about the controller before, by the way, and here's the controller download for Zoom Rooms, and I'm going to download that on my tablet later. Okay, so we already have Zoom Rooms downloaded, so let's not do that again. Here it is. I can start it up. Double click to start it up, and it comes up and shows you this thing pair with the controller. So now let's look at the controller and how we would pair that with the Zoom Rooms display. So the controller runs on a tablet. I'm going to run it on this Android tablet. I can actually run on a phone as well, although I know if I tried to go to the Google Play store and I couldn't find the app for the phone, but I could find it on the Zoom website. So if you want to run it on the phone, try the Zoom website. But anyway, here we are on the Android tablet, and I searched for Zoom Room app and came up with a few things. This is in the Google Play Store, and what you want is this thing that says Zoom Rooms. So you're not actually running Zoom Rooms here. This is actually the Zoom Room controller. So download that thing. So if I've already downloaded it, so let's run it. Here it is, Zoom Rooms. We'll start it up. And it's going to want a pairing code so it can connect up with the Zoom Rooms computer in the sanctuary. So we'll type in the pairing code. And it connected up. Okay, so now it's connected to the display, but it still says it wants you to sign in. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's look at the settings. You can pick which microphone you're going to use in the sanctuary. The webcams actually have microphones, but we're not going to use those. We're just going to use the regular audio input to the Zoom Rooms computer, which comes from the mixer, which has the microphones from the sound system in the church. The speaker we're going to use is this sound bar that's set up in the church, connected to the TV, and the camera I'll talk about in a minute. So these things, most of this options you have here want you to sign in. And we don't have an account, but you don't actually need an account if you use Join. So go to Join, and here, just with an unlicensed Zoom Rooms software here, you can connect up, type in your meeting ID for the Zoom meeting, type in your passcode. Okay, and we're all connected up, as you can see, and this is the controller display. So what can you do on this display? Well, first thing I want to do is go to the participants. So you'll notice that we're not seeing the host right now because the host has its video turned off. If you want to see the host, we can show non-video participants. And actually, we usually do that during the service because a lot of people have their video turned off, but the point of having the display of everybody in the sanctuary is not so much that we can see them, but so that we can see that they're there. So even if we have an empty box and their video's turned off, we know, hey, there's a bunch of people with us there in the sanctuary, which is kind of neat. And by the way, we also use the display not just for letting you know who's in the Zoom service, but sometimes you might have a speaker who's out there on Zoom who's going to join the service and talk to you, and so then you can use the display for that. And in fact, then you would want to switch to speaker view. So you can use the change view to switch between speaker view and gallery view. The one other thing you can do with respect to what's being seen and heard in the sanctuary is control the volume of the speaker in the sanctuary. That is the sound bar. Now, normally during the service, we don't want somebody out on Zoom to accidentally unmute themselves and you hear the dog barking in the sanctuary. That's not such a good thing. So we keep the speaker turned down until we get to the part of the service where we are sharing prayers and concerns or announcements, and we want people on Zoom to be able to speak into the sanctuary. Then we just turn the volume up. Very easy. Okay, now let's look at what people on Zoom see. So this is the host's display, and I'm going to spotlight the church here so that everybody out on Zoom is going to see what's going on in the church. The feature that I use the most in this Zoom Room controller is this switch camera button. So with this, it brings up a list of the cameras on the system. Actually, we don't really have the OBS camera, but the other three are the three cameras that you've seen. So the C920 is the one you're seeing right now that looks across the front of the sanctuary. The C270, you can click to that. That looks at the pulpit when the pastor is preaching. And the MJPEG camera points out at the congregation. So really nice to be able to easily switch among those. The C920 is kind of neat in that Zoom Rooms supports pan and zoom for this thing. So Zoom Rooms supports pan and zoom for high-end cameras, but these are all budget cameras. But we can pan and zoom this thing, so I can zoom in using this and pan around. Oops, whatever. Pretty convenient. Now, and this MJPEG camera, even though Zoom Rooms doesn't support pan and zoom for this thing, I can still pan and zoom it if I go to a browser. So I have a browser window that is connected to that camera. Come on. And this thing controls that camera, so I can zoom out and zoom back in. So it's not quite as convenient as having it in the Zoom Rooms interface, but it's better than nothing. Okay, we're almost done, but I want to show you one cool thing about Zoom Rooms that you might find useful even if you never use Zoom Rooms for your church. So if you are in a meeting with more than 2 participants, normally you'll never get better than standard 640 by 480 video resolution, regardless of how great your equipment is or how much bandwidth you have. But if you join the meeting from a Zoom room, instantly your maximum resolution goes to high def. And this is true even if the Zoom room leaves the meeting. If the Zoom room leaves the meeting, the resolution of the meeting for everybody stays at high def. Pretty cool. So you can try this at home, but I'm going to show you right now. So you can see here that I'm in a call. I'm in a call with my kitchen. And if I click up here and click the settings gear, and we go to video, you can see here that the resolution right now is 1280 by 720. That is high def. And the video might not look super to you, but that's a limitation of my camera, probably more than anything. The video is high def, 1280 by 720. But this is only because this is a point-to-point call. It's just two parties. Now I'm going to add a third party, my phone, and you will see that instantly the resolution dropped to 640 by 360. And even if I stop the video on my phone, doesn't matter. In fact, if my phone leaves the call, it will stay at 640 by 360. But now I'm going to join it from the Zoom room. So I join the meeting from the Zoom room, and boom, the resolution is back up to 1280 by 720 to high def. Pretty neat, huh? So now I will leave the meeting from the Zoom room. The Zoom room is no longer connected, and the resolution stays at 1280 by 720. So that's your tip for today. So even if you never use Zoom rooms for church, you can set up a Zoom room and just call into whatever meeting you want and bump up the resolution of the meeting. That's pretty much it. Before signing off, I should mention two networking related issues that if they apply to you, well, you might want to find somebody with some networking know-how to give you a hand because they're kind of beyond the scope of this video. So the first thing I alluded to earlier, and that is if you're going to use the Zoom Room controller from somewhere outside the church, like I use it from my home, then you're going to need to set up a VPN between the church and the tablet. The second thing is, if your church has limited upstream bandwidth, let's say your internet service provider only gives you 5 megabits per second upstream, then you might want to take some steps to ensure that on Sunday mornings you don't have visitors who are using the bandwidth and interfering with your Zoom stream. So there are a couple things you might do. One is to modify the configuration in the router so that the traffic coming from the Zoom Room's computer in the church is given higher priority. Or another thing you might do is set up a guest network so that the visitors are limited in what bandwidth they can use. Anyway, if you have either of those issues that I mentioned and you can't find anybody to help you out, leave a message below and I'll try to give you some pointers. Or if you have any other questions or comments, please leave them below. So thanks for watching and take care. Bye-bye.